In this example, we want to see how to create a same size or same side fillet weld in SolidWorks. I'm going to start out by creating a new part file, and depending on how you've started SolidWorks, there may be already on screen an option to create the part file, or we can go up here and do File New, or I see this blank page here. I can click on this down arrow and select New. Again, your screen might look slightly different than mine depending on how you started SolidWorks, but I'm going to select that I want to create a part. And at some point you might have been prompted for the units. I wasn't prompted for the units, so I'm going to come down here to where it says Custom, and I'm going to set my units to inch, pound, seconds. So we need to make sure that our units are correct. Now I'm going to make a couple of other changes just for the purposes of instruction. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go to Options, and I'll go to Document Properties, and I have it on ISO. I want the ANSI standard, so in the beginning we should have picked ANSI standard, and I'll go to Units. I have it on inch units, and I'm going to go back to dimensions. Now this step you don't need to change, but I'm going to go to Font, and so that it's easy to see the text from the back of the room, I'm going to change the text height to 0.375, and I'll say OK to that, and I'll save the file. So we should save the file. And the first thing I did, and I forgot to point this out, is I created a folder that I named DSG328 to save all of our work. Losing work is, there's no excuse. We have to make sure we save our work. So I'm gonna call this first one SolidWorks, and I don't really need to put the name SolidWorks in here, but I'm gonna call it SolidWorks same side fillet weld. Notice it puts this extension SLD PRT, that stands for SolidWorks part file. I'll go ahead and save my file. And I'm going to come over here where we see there's a front plane, a top plane, and a right side plane. I'm going to right click on this front plane, and I'll select in this corner to create a sketch. And there I will then draw a rectangle, and I'm going to draw that rectangle or sketch that rectangle below the origin. This red marker is called the origin, and I'll draw another rectangle above the origin, about like that. And I'll hit escape to get out of the rectangle command. Then I'm going to come up here and I'll do Smart Dimension, and I'm going to dimension the width of this rectangle as 2 inches. And you might have to double click on that dimension, or it might let you dimension it right off the bat. I'm going to put in 2. That's actually a setting that I need to go and find and change so that it'll let me dimension that more easily. I'm going to dimension this dimension as 1.5, and I'm going to dimension this distance as 0.5, and I'm going to dimension this distance as 0.5. So we've dimensioned the width and height of our rectangles. Now I want to locate those rectangles in space. As right now, if I drag this rectangle, we can drag it anywhere on the screen, and I want it to be locked down in space. I'm going to drag this rectangle up a little bit, and then I'm going to move my cursor until I find the midpoint of this line. And so if you move your mouse back and forth, you'll see it highlights the midpoint. I'm going to click on that midpoint. I'll hold down the Control key on the keyboard, and I'll select the origin, and I want to make those 2 points coincident. So I'll select here for coincident, or you can select over here for coincident. That will move this point up to that point. And watch these lines. When I do that, right now they're blue. When I make that coincident, it's locked in space. Those lines turn black. They're now fully defined. I'm going to do the same thing with this. I'm going to put the midpoint here, down here. So I'm going to select that midpoint. I'll hold down the Control key, and I'll select this midpoint. Now notice over here it should only say those 2 points are selected. It shouldn't have any lines selected. I'll do coincident, and now that turns black. That's all fully constrained. If you hold your mouse wheel down, you can rotate this sketch a little bit. If you turn your mouse wheel in and out, you can zoom in and out. So I've rotated around a little bit so I can see this more in 3D. I'm going to go to the Features tab, and I'm going to do Extrude. I have multiple profiles here. I have a profile here, and I have a profile here. So this box is highlighted, selected contours. I need to select which contour I want to extrude. So I'm going to select this contour, and I'm going to drag this arrow back this way. And let's do that at a distance of 3 inches. And I'll say OK to that. I did something right, save it. Now when I did that, my sketch became hidden. So over here in the browser, I'm going to click on this arrow to expand this feature. And so here I see my original sketch number 1. I'm going to right click on that sketch, and I'm going to click on this eyeball to show that sketch so that I can see that sketch again. So here we see that sketch. I want to make that sketch active. I'm going to click on it to highlight it. So now we see it's highlighted here. I'm going to do extrude again. And again, I'm going to drag this arrow back this way, and I'm going to tell it to go 3 inches. Now this is the next step is really critically important. We're doing a weldment of 2 parts. If I tell this to merge results, it's only going to be 1 part. There's no point in doing a weldment. So make sure you uncheck this merge results box. I'll say OK to that. And actually it's giving me an error because I didn't select the contour that I wanted to extrude. So I will close that box, and I'm going to right click and clear this selection. At least I thought I was. And I'm going to click inside that rectangle. Now we see that it's highlighted, and uncheck merge results. I'll say OK to that. And so now we see that that is extruded. I can now hide this sketch, so I'll right click and hide the visibility of that sketch so that I don't see it anymore. Alright, now notice up here at the top of the browser it says 2 solid bodies. So we have this base piece that we made first, and then this vertical piece. We're doing weldments, we need to make sure we have multiple solid bodies. Did something right, I'll save it. Alright, for the next step I need to go to my weldments tools. Now you might not see this tab for weldments. Right click on one of the other tabs, and we check mark this for the weldments tools. And so now we have that weldments tools. Now I want to put a physical weld bead in here. I've already put this onto my screen, so let me show you how I did that. So let's go to customize. We will go to commands, and I'll go down to weldments. And so here I see this fillet bead. You can drag and drop that onto the weldments ribbon. Now, I've already done that, so I'm not going to do it again. Now we'll have to do that every day because of deep freeze. On your home computer or work computer, you would do that one time, set it and forget it. Okay, so I'm going to do a fillet bead, and I'm going to change the size of it to 0.25. And then it asks me this, whatever you see highlighted here, this blue area, it asks me to select face number 1. I'm going to select this as face number 1, and then I'll click here for face set number 2. I'll select this face, and it previews that weld bead. I'll go ahead and say OK to that. Now inside your class folder we have a template for inch drawings in SolidWorks. So I'm going to do open, and I'm going to select this PCT inch solid DRT. Now you might have to change your file types to all files so that you can see that file. I'll select this PCT inch solid DRT. I'll select open on that. So this is our drawing sheet. Now we need to edit this drawing sheet to put your name in the title block. So I'm going to come over here to where it says sheet number 1, and I'm going to say edit sheet format. Then double click on the name and put in your name in place of the name that's there, as much as will fit in here and look aesthetically pleasing if you have a really long name. I'll say OK to that. Now the next step is absolutely critically important. Once we have made that change to the title block, we need to click here. This is called the confirmation corner. We need to accept that change. So I'll click here on the confirmation corner and accept that change. Now we don't want to do that every day, so I want to save this as a template file. So let's do File, and let's say Save Sheet Format. And you can let's give this your name. So go ahead and put in your name as PCT inch, solid DRT, SLD DRT. Okay, so that's the template we'll start from each time, but now I want to save this as our drawing file. And so this time I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click on Save. Notice this time that it's putting the extension SLD DRW, solid drawing, and I'm going to give that the name SolidWorks. Same side fillet weld. Alright, we want to start placing some views into this, and there's several different ways we can do that. If I come up here on View Layout, and we can place a model view this way. Also, if we come over here to this View palette, and it may or may not populate the part file that we have. And if I click on this down arrow, I can see that here's the file that we have open, and it shows the various views of that part. And so we also could have done, so we could have gone to model view and selected it that way. We might have to browse if we don't have that file open. We might have to browse out and find it. I'm going to go ahead and do it from over here. I'm going to drag this isometric view up here onto the screen like that. Now I may want that view to be bigger, and I might want it to be shaded. So to shade it, I can tell it just shaded without darkening the edges, or I'm going to do shaded with edges. So here we see it darker, and I'm going to set it to high quality. And then here where it says scale, I'm going to tell it to use a custom scale, and I'm going to tell it to, let's see how 1:1. 1:1 fits real nicely on that sheet, so I'm going to accept that 1:1. Now we could have also, if we had selected model view, we could have clicked right here for isometric view. Alright, I'll say OK to that to place my view. There's a blue origin point here that we don't want, that will print out. I want to hide that, and let's click on this down arrow where it says show items, and I'm going to click I'm going to turn off this view origins, and that will hide that blue dot. Again, you do that on your home computer or on your work computer. You only have to do it once and it will be done. You won't have to do it again. I did notice one thing, and we need to fix this in our template. We'll fix it on the next problem. The title is over here, and it should be over this way. So let's right click on sheet format. I'm going to do edit sheet format. Now notice your drawing views disappeared, so don't panic on that. I'm going to select this text, and I'm going to move this over here so that looks more aesthetically pleasing. I'll say OK to that. Okay, we don't see our views. We need to click on the confirmation corner to accept the changes to the title block. Alright, I'm going to go to the annotation tab. So I'm going to place my weld symbol now, and I do that on the annotation tab. So on the view tab, I lay out my views, and then on the annotation, I add my notes and symbols. So I'm going to do a weld symbol, and I'm going to click here where it says weld symbol, and I'm going to want this to be on the same side. So on the bottom side of the arrow, I will do a fillet weld, and I'm going to tell it to do a flat. Notice I could do flat, convex, or concave contour to that weld, and I'll put in the size here. I'm going to put in 0.25, or you could put 1 divided by 4. And then I'm going to click here to place the weld bead, and then click for the location for the dog leg, and I'll say OK to that. Now when I did that, I noticed that mine put an ISO symbol instead of an ANSI, American National Standard Institute symbol, and so I want to change that. And if I double click on that, so I notice it says ISO weld symbol. Now you probably won't have to do this on yours, but let me show you how to do it in case it's necessary. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go to options, and I'm going to go to document properties, and I'm going to expand annotations and come down here to weld symbols, and it's set on the ISO standard. I'm going to select the ANSI standard, and I'll say OK to that. And then it messed up my symbol when I did that, so I'm just going to delete it and put it in again. So I'll select weld symbol. I'll put it on a fillet weld, flat. This time we can see it previewing OK. 0.25. And I'm curious about one other thing. I noticed before actually that it still said ISO on the old one. Now it's changed to ANSI. I think that's what the problem was. And I want that one to be flat. So I'll select once and then twice. I'll say OK. And so there is my first drawing, and I've accidentally, make sure you look back over your drawing to make sure it's aesthetically pleasing. I see that I had an extra weld symbol here, and I also see at some point I had accidentally undone the work that we did earlier, and so I'm going to edit that sheet format, move this over, and now that's and make sure we hit our confirmation corner. It makes it look like we lose everything if we don't do that, and then save that.